Hello and welcome to another Light Reading Telecom Innovator video. My name is Phil Harvey and this is Light Reading's sponsored video series where we explore some of the people, technologies, and ideas that are moving the industry forward. Joining me today is Andy Walker from Accenture. And Andy and I just had a conversation at Mobile World Congress. What was it? In the fall, right?
It was a couple months ago in Las Vegas.
In the Americas, yeah, and we talked a lot about how the industry's changing and sort of what you see on the horizon for this coming year, 2023, and here we are in 2023. So we have another set of things to talk about today. So Andy, thanks so much for your time. First of all,
Phil, great to see you again. Great to be back together.
Yeah, indeed. And yeah, we made it to 2023. And I mean, that's saying something because in the past decade, we've seen a huge technology disruption across not just the telecom space, but all industries. And then, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic kind of doubled down on, not just some of the technical innovation that was happening, as far as remote work and things like that, but also it just really changed patterns. It changed how consumers live, how they work, how they communicate, and it. I guess that interruption was harsh at first, and then kind of sustained because of the multiple waves, and then the fact that people just sort of rethought their patterns. Of course, it affected the communication service providers, as well. So I kind of wanted to get your thoughts about. How did you see the CSPs changing overall during the pandemic, and what effect do you think it had over the whole industry?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question. I think first, the CSPs were asked to step up in a really kind of powerful way and frankly, transformative way. I think if we were to go back 5 or 6 years, people wouldn't necessarily think telecom was particularly cool or maybe even know who their internet service provider was. And with all of us being stuck at home for learning, for work, et cetera, broadband, the connectivity we have in our homes, frankly, the connectivity we carry around on our devices has just become much more important. And I think the second part of this is, there's been a lot of innovation, right? So you look at different carriers that have launched security services, that are launching new video platforms, that are launching connected home services and all the rest. So you have a lot of innovation. You have a lot more people at home. Connectivity is increasingly important. And then I think, kind of underpinning that, or maybe the challenge is, all of these companies are still running on the same systems and processes that they were 15 or 20 years ago. So you're trying to roll out new products. You're trying to be innovative. You're trying to be everything to your customers because your customers are demanding more. And in a lot of cases, you're having to do it with, with tape and staples and paper clips behind the scenes to hold it all together.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. It is interesting too, because the telecommunications companies themselves were built really for resilience and for redundancy and, and stability. And then this new sort of world comes along and we are, everything's on all the time. Things are changing very quickly, and consumer and business, appetites sort of insist on things being, readily available all the time. So that necessitates moving some of these operations and business support systems to the cloud. When you're looking at CSPs in particularly, like you mentioned, some of the paper clips and, and duct tape that they might have behind the scenes. I do think of those, those kind of staged telecom systems, those like the BSS. How do you get a CSP to move the BSS to the cloud, or sort of what propels them to do that?
Yeah, and this is probably the least sexy part of telecom, and also I would say the most important. So if you look at what's coming out in the telecom press or what we talk about at conferences, we're talking about 5G and edge compute and all these kind of really cool topics, right? And then what people forget about is there's billing and business support systems that underpin the telco that were largely built, in many cases 20, 30 years ago with a set of basic products and services in mind. And these things were for sales and support and billing and installation, right? Your kind of basic functions. And now you start to add new products, new services, new ecosystem partners. If you think about things like 5G to the enterprise, you're starting to, the telcos are starting to offer services in conjunction with ecosystem partners. And the question comes, well, how do I bill for that? Right. And can my systems keep up? And it even becomes a strategic imperative for the telco, because, if their competitor can launch new products or services and bill for them and take them to market quickly, and another telco can't, you start to achieve competitive advantage. So suddenly these really kind of unsexy systems that underpin the telecommunications carrier are suddenly incredibly important. And so the conversations about how do I move my BSS platform to the cloud and how do I digitize, I think are really very important. And they're occurring kind of across the industry right now.
And when a CSP, and it's a daunting task too, because like you said, it's kind of built for, kind of a different time and a different set of circumstances. And now we have, and I'm glad you brought up partners, because that's a huge kind of step in the evolution of the CSP, is the fact that they're not trying to do every single thing themselves. But as you point out, they have to have the infrastructure to support, adding and taking away partners, or having, billing happen through someone else's systems, or sort of in conjunction with other, triggering events. How do CSPs get there? Like, what's the big first step?
Yeah, I think the big first step is honestly to have a conversation about the product roadmap. So what are the different products and services that the carrier intends to offer going forward? What is it they need to offer now, in 2 years, in 5 years? And frankly, what are they going to get rid of? So, I think it all starts with the business imperative as to how the company is positioning and what offers and products they want to roll out, right? I mean, we see carriers with insurance products. We see carriers with, the video and security that I mentioned. We see carriers that are opening up their APIs for, to co-partner with ecosystem partners. And so, the CIO and the systems that she or he supports don't stand a chance if they're not involved in the conversation about the different products, services, offers that the company wants to put out there. I think once you get that right, then you can start to have a conversation, all right, about how do I support my current business? And then what does the future business look like? And then how do I rationalize my applications and set myself up for success going forward?
Yeah, that's a great point too, because communication service providers in general usually have to have, depending on how they're regulated, they have to have kind of one foot in the past. They can't just, stop everything and start with a clean slate. So, what does the migration process itself look like if you're going to, take this kind of critical infrastructure and migrate it to the cloud? Is it something that, obviously it's not something that happens overnight, but what would you say to a CSP when they say, okay, give me a bit of detail around how this is going to, how this is going to manifest itself in my business?
Right. I think, probably the most important word to use is deliberate. It's well planned and deliberate. Any migration has to recognize that maybe 80% of the revenue of the company is still going to be tied up in legacy products. We're starting to talk about, new products and new offers. Is that going to really move the needle in the next year or two? Probably not. But at the same time, you have to account for that. You have to have the systems and processes in place as you launch the new products and offers. But at the same time, you don't want to mess up your current business. So, I would say any conversation about migration involves, first of all, are you building the platform that's going to support your future ambitions? And can that platform support current? And then how do you start to think about, keeping your current customers in a place where you don't have a screw up, right? When you have issues with a billing system, suddenly, that affects your revenue as a company. And for the longest time when I was growing up, I worked for the CFO of a telecom who had this cardinal rule, which is never touch the BSS. It's like, I don't ever want to touch this, because if someone screws something up, then suddenly I don't make my quarterly numbers. Well, you can't really have that philosophy anymore, right? Because you're trying to launch new product services. You're trying to be competitive with new entrants that are doing new things. So you have to protect your current revenue. You've got to set yourself up for success to migrate. And then you have to do it very deliberately and in a way that kind of protects the business as well as enables.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's obviously it's going to be a lot of effort. You migrate anything to the cloud, especially something that's structurally super important to a business. And obviously, it's not a business that's standing still either. You've got to, kind of account for, like you said, being deliberate, but also, thinking it through before you get started. But at the end of it, you're unlocking, first of all, probably a lot more efficiency in the business, and then you could potentially unlock new revenue, especially if you get to work with, additional partners and delivering new kinds of services, because you have, the advent of this new network that's not held back by its own infrastructure. Even if you can't name names, can you give an example of how that's working out, or how you've seen this, automation and increased efficiency take place as carriers are moving their BSS to the cloud?
Absolutely. And I think the point you just made is exactly the right one. First of all, I would say time to revenue is the key factor, which is, can I have systems in place? Can I have a BSS in place that allows me to launch new products, that allows me to innovate, that allows me to test? And new BSSs are allowing that, right? And so if you've got a cloud-based business support system, set of systems, and you can launch new products, that gives you a competitive advantage over your peers, right? And so, when I think about it from a revenue side, I think there's an imperative. And then I think the second point about, does it enable you to be more efficient? Absolutely. If you can simplify your technology stack, you can reduce your costs. So you have the two things you're always looking for in business. How do I drive new revenue? And then how also do I run more efficiently? So you get both of those. One of our clients, Windtree, Accenture partnered with Oracle, and we delivered exceptional results for them. The CIO has been extremely pleased with their ability to offer and bring new products to market. They are, by the way, the largest wireless provider in Italy, and also provide broadband services. So we've enabled them to be much more competitive and dynamic in the market, and they've put out videos about how Accenture and Oracle and themselves have built a BSS that's cloud-based, that's flexible, that can do the things that they want it to do, so that they can take share.
Yeah, that's exceptional, and it's a great example too, because one of the leading alternative carriers in that market, they have some pretty entrenched competition. So the only way around it is to be more innovative, be more nimble, and like you said, overall be a more efficient business. Obviously, anything involving moving the cloud, the BSS to the cloud, it's going to, like we said, starts with a conversation. CSPs, if you're watching this, one person to invite to that conversation is Andy Walker from Accenture. And Andy, thanks so much for your time today.
Phil, thank you.